Well, thank you very much, everyone, for having come. First of all, I want to thank the Hillel Center, the Montreal Holocaust Museum, and the Esther and Peter Kleinman for having organized this symposium and having invited me to speak today and last week. I want to thank Brandy Burson, who's a great organizer, and I want to thank Gil Chochet, who was the student who just addressed you, who was waiting for me at the entrance, the main door of Dawson College. And I want to say whatever we say against youth and how young people are terrible, and I think, well, everybody's terrible, young or old, but that I've been treated during this week with much more courtesy than in a long time, that I've been invited to give speeches. Okay, so there are a couple of lessons in courtesy that you could give to your elders, Don't let the poor guest speaker wander in the college because the poor person got lost and cannot find the right floor or and give water to this person, who's going to get thirsty very soon. So congratulations to all the people who were involved in the symposium. Now, to business. Before, I ask you to be patient with my thick French accent. There's nothing I can do about it. There are fights that you can win, there are fights you're going to lose. This is one that I've lost. So I've given up, and you have to you have to put up with this accent. I'm going to try to speak very clearly. Why the title of this speech is Open and Hidden Secrets, Anti-Semitism and War Criminals in Quebec. It's a very confusing title, but then my mind now is very confused, so you're going to hear a lot about confusion. Why my mind is confused about open and hidden secrets is that in Quebec, like in many other Quebec, Canada, or many other countries, but even more so in Quebec, there are lots of well-known secrets. There are secrets, but everybody knows that they are secrets. So you should not talk about them, even though everybody knows about it. One example of it can be found in my, what now I call my first book, a hint that there might be another one. I wish there's going to be another one. Now it's a matter of hard work and sheer luck. But when I wrote about anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jews, and hatred of French Canadians by Lionel Groux and Le Devoir, well, I like to think that I'm very bright. It's very flattering to think that I could be very bright, but I'm not that bright that I saw something that no one else before had ever seen. I was not the first to notice that Le Devoir, the newspaper that nobody reads, Le Devoir and Lionel Groux, you know how to recognize a foreigner on the streets of Montreal? He's carrying Le Devoir under his arms. He wants to look as if he's part of the gang, So I was not the first to notice that Le Devoir and Lionel Groux were rabid anti-Semites, and that they hated fiercely French Canadians too. So it was quite open, it was quite well known. All the more that anti-Semitism and hatred of French Canadians, these people hatred everyone, was on the front page of Le Devoir. So you didn't need to look very deeply, into the newspaper to look at the last page. No, it was front page. But then nobody talked about it. You could not find a decent book, no matter how clumsy, but at least one on that topic. It was what I call the A word. You cannot say anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jews, or for that matter, as I said, hatred of French Canadians, and hatred of everything and everyone. So, and at the same time, very strangely too, these people who hated the whole world didn't use their real names. Again, it was open and hidden at the same time. So anti-Semitism was front page in Le Devoir, but most of the articles were signed under pen names. So they hide. They were blatantly anti-Semitic, but at the same time they hide it. but they were so twisted that at the same time that they hide it, they managed to see that they were trying to hide. I'm going to give you one example. Their pen names, when they said that Jews were dirty, that they lived in lice-ridden ghettos, that they were criminals, they had big crooked nose, big crooked fingers, all that stuff. Le Devoir, mind you, established to educate French Canadians. Thank God we were not very much educated. It spared us the worst, I think. And as Maurice Duplessis was fond of saying, some people cannot stand education. It's like alcohol, you know. So I think it was the case of Le Devoir. Too much education just got to their head. And anyway, so at the same time that they use pen names, they hide their real identity. These pen names were so ludicrous that they were screaming that they were pen names. They were so non-plausible, so impossible, that they were hiding while screaming that they were hiding. I'm going to give you an example. One of the pen names used front page in Le Devoir was, in French, Pierre qui roule, which would be translated in English as Rolling Stone. Well, it was much before Mick Jagger, you see, so I cannot see the influence. So everybody who was reading an article signed by Rolling Stone knows that it's not a real person. It's as if I had signed my first book as, I could have taken a pen name. Now I said, were you dumb? You know, you should have used a pen name, you know. Like, let's say Louise Côté. Well, it's not impossible. There are lots of Louise Côté, so Esther Delisle or Louise Côté. No. But if I had used the pen name of The Witch, so it's probably a pen name. And I'm trying to say to everyone, look, it's not my real name. Because nobody has as a real name The Witch. See? Well, so Lionel Groux, this great hero, you know, the metro station just before the one you get out? See? Lionel Groux. Well, he used no less, as far as I know, than 14 pen names. It might be 50, I don't know, but I know of 14. So it led me to write in my book, cheap and very good, that some mornings he woke up and he didn't know who he was. Could you live with 14 pen names? 14 different set of names. And again, all these pen names were totally impossible. Like the fox was running after his tail. Well, nobody... Le renard qui court après sa queue. It's absurd, you know. It's all that twisted thing. We're going to show that we are fascist and anti-Semite, but at the same time, we won't say it, while making very sure that everybody knows that, nevertheless, we said it. Well, it shows at least one thing. They were cowards, okay? Adolf Hitler at least signed Adolf Hitler, okay? You knew where he stand. Here, no, there is that thing of not saying while saying at the same time. So that's about open and hidden secrets, you know. We know, but we don't know. No. At two levels, the identity of the people who wrote in the 30s, and then how it was treated by historians afterwards. You know, all these screams and everything I heard about my dissertation and my book, give me a break, okay? They knew. So I think it's very embarrassing because many historians lied. And when they did not lie, they did a pitifully bad job. And I think many, not all of them, I cannot talk for them, but some did it on purpose. I'm going to give you one example. There is a biography of a famous intellectual. Doesn't matter if you don't know who he is, André Laurando. There is a CJEP named after him. Well, in this biography of André Laurando, famous intellectual, the author, Denis Monnière, doesn't mention that an international organization, fascist international organization, sent him a letter calling him Dear Comrade. Dear Comrade. I don't know what it means. Does it mean that André Laurando was writing regularly to that international fascist organization? Does it mean that they got his name? I don't know how. But what is even more interesting for me is how is it that this letter is not mentioned in the book? He didn't read it. He didn't, you know, when you look very carefully, It's astounding what you can find without being a genius, just doing a good job. Another example. We had lunch with Pierre Trudeau. Now it's time for name dropping. You see, I know the rich and the powerful in this world, you see. So, and I had invited a professor, history professor from France, Catherine Pomerols, good friend of mine. And it was very funny because after the lunch, Pomerols, good friend of mine, told Trudeau, you know, Monsieur Trudeau, you signed a petition when you were very young. So Trudeau said, no, I never signed petitions, never. It's against my principles. She said, oh, yes, you did. He said, yeah. She said, yes, but then you were 11 years old. He said, you got that petition? She said, yes, I have a copy. And you can see that he was 11 years old because just the way he signed, you know, when someone is quite young, the way the letters are. So it was too good. So I got a copy of the petition and I sent it to him and I said, you know, you can never be sure about anything, especially when Catherine Pomerols is making the research. And it was true, he signed the petition. He was not guilty of anything. He was 11 years old, you know. But it was a petition organized by André Laurando and Lionel Groux in every classical colleges in Quebec, including Brébeuf, where Pierre Trudeau was a student. So you see, anyone who make a decent and good research, no need to be this brilliant spirit, is going to find a lot of things. Which says something about Canada, not just Quebec. People are so lazy that if you work a little harder than anyone else, you're going to get much more information. It's really a matter of working just a little more. And here people don't work that much. So let me tell you, you don't have to make that huge an effort to find stuff. Okay, there is hope for people who would be less lazy than their elders. Now, about my current research. It's part of the title of this lecture. Open and hidden secret, anti-Semitism and war criminals in Quebec. Now my interest is more in war criminals. And now I don't prepare very carefully my lectures because my research, I learn something new, if not every day, every week. So I gave up preparing very carefully lectures because it's not true the week after or the day after. Like the day before yesterday, I interviewed the son of a political refugee. Political refugee, you have to understand Nazi collaborators, okay? But depending to whom you are talking to, you use different expressions. I couldn't tell. The guy was very charming and good looking, which nice change. Because, you know, I interview a lot of 80-old people and 80 years old. And, well, you know, no matter how well preserved you are, you know. And here was this good-looking man, 57. I said, gosh, is there a young one? So, but I couldn't tell him, well, you fathered the Nazi collaborators. You know, it would make for a very short interview. So I said, let's call them political refugees. That's the code word. And maybe his father was not that involved in collaboration. You know, it's all, you have to make sure. But anyway, just talking to that guy, 1 hour, I found another priest, another monk, involved in getting French collaborators in Quebec. I thought I knew most of what there could be known about monasteries, priests, and French Nazi collaborators. But no, there was another one. By the name of Thibodeau. Father Thibodeau, who was, as this man told me, a petit rigolo. Was very interesting character, traveling a lot, doing lots of business. Monks are not what you believe they are, okay? Let me tell you that some of them had a pretty interesting life. Prayer being remotely part of their lives, okay? These monks. So, no, monks can be great fun, you know, they are not, and that's the beauty of doing research. It's never what you expected it would be. That's why it's so great, I think. Because you always start with a set of assumptions. You have to start somewhere. But then these assumptions, most of the times, unravel. And I was always hoping to find a sort of Dr. Strangelove. You know, the crazy scientist? I said, I'm going to find the crazy monk, the guy who knew everything. who organized everything, who was in France and masterminded the coming to Canada of all these Nazi collaborators because they had to get the hell out of France. Okay, many of them were condemned to death. So if they didn't want to be killed, they had to leave. One of the possible places to go was Quebec, given the high esteem French Canadian had given to Pétain. Well, it was a logical destination. So I said, I'm going to find this Dr. Strangelove, this crazy monk who knows everything and is moving all the pieces. And no, there is no Dr. Strangelove. There are many of them. And it's not a huge pipeline, where all these Nazi collaborators are coming in just one. No, there are many. It's more like blood vessels, so there is this connection, the other connection. I still don't know everything about the connection. But then I'm surprised that no good book has been written about French Nazi collaborators in Quebec, because it's no secret again. Everybody can play surprise and say, oh yes. I said, well, oh yes. The most famous of them, the big killer, the killer with a capital K, was allegedly a member of the French nobility. His name was de Bernonville. Strikingly looking, he was very tall, very slim, big blue eyes, and with no less than 32 scars on his body. That's what was said in the press at the time. So this guy was the killer. I think there was another killer, but this one I'm sure. The big fish, the really bad guy. So he came here, and he worked for Klaus Barbie in Lyon during the war. I don't know if you know about Klaus Barbie, but let's say it's not a dignified acquaintance. Let's put it that way. So he came here after the war, where he was entertained by the rich and the powerful, met the Prime Minister of Quebec. Anyway, very nice life, until he had to leave. But while he was here from 1946 to 1951, his presence in Quebec created a huge uproar. Okay, Canada, not just Quebec, Canada was divided between should he stay or should he leave. Okay, he didn't come alone. As far as we knew then, 5 others, Nazi collaborators, came here. But by far the most romantic of them was Comte de Bernonville. And the bourgeoisie in Outremont was very pleased to have a member of the French nobility in its neighborhood. They were very flattered by it. So he met all these nice people. And but then, because of the uproar, should he stay? Is he a real killer, or is he a victim of the communists? What was finally decided? There were hundreds of articles in the newspapers. So don't tell me it was a secret. Hundreds, really hundreds, French and English press. So what the deal that was finally struck was by Louis Saint Laurent, Canadian Prime Minister at the time. The 5 minor figures are going to stay, but de Bernonville is leaving. He is much too dirty to stay here. People were so afraid of de Bernonville that, okay, Saint Laurent told him, you're leaving. You choose a country and you go there. So the guy looked at the map and said, I'm going to go there. There was Brazil, where another monastery was involved in getting him there. So anyway, he went to Brazil. But to go to Brazil, from Canada, the airplane had to land in the States to put more fuel. The United States of America were so afraid that he would escape that they put soldiers at the door of the airplane to make sure that he was staying in the airplane. The time that he put more fuel in the airplane and then go to Brazil. What happened to this mysterious figure in character in Brazil? Where he lived happily until 1972. Well, in 1972 he was murdered. Why? Well, the official explanation: he was strangled by the son of his maids, who was said to be possessed by the voodoo. And going mad, he just strangled the guy, okay? Well, if you believe that, I'm the Queen of England, you see. So it's much likelier that the guy had written his memoirs. Well, if you have been a higher-ranking Nazi in France, it's much better to don't write your memoirs if you want to die a natural death. See, if you want to have a sorry end, that's exactly what you do. So anyway, he was murdered. But his fierce French-Canadian supporters wrote to him until the end. You know, he was... but the others could stay here, could stay in Canada. But there were more than 5. That's what I discovered. There were many more than 5. Not all killers. Some were journalists. Some were writers. One of them was a writer. I got an answer from him yesterday. You see, talking about open and hidden, this guy is a novelist, and now he's a member of the Académie Française. So I wrote him a letter because now I think that chutzpah pays. Chutzpah, you ask, what can happen? He's going to say no? Well, it's no. He can think whatever he wants about me. I couldn't care less what he thinks, you know. And he's old. They are all old. So now I'm running against the clock, you know. It's because I don't know when they're going to die. They are so old. So the guy is something like 90. So I got the answer yesterday. One lie after another. This novelist had written a novel. His name is Michel Mort. And he had written Mon royaume pour un cheval, My kingdom for a horse. And in that book, in that novel, the last part is devoted to his time in Montreal. The guy lived in Montreal after the war. And he has very good descriptions of people. You can recognize the other political refugees, collaborators, very good. But when you read he's a member of the Académie Française, when you read his resume, nowhere is it said that he lived in Montreal. But then he put it in a novel. If you don't want to talk about it, please don't write a novel about it, you see. He said, how did you know? I said, I write your novel, dear, you know, no need to... No, it's part of the novel. It's maddening, you know, the way people think. Anyway, so I asked him, I sent him a question, asking him to answer, who is who? Who did he meet when he was in Montreal? Then I got the answer, he doesn't remember. Because, you know, he's old. So I'm going to answer that at his age, unfortunately, people tend to remember much better what they did 50 years ago than what they did the day before. And it's true. You know, the older you get, the easier it is to remember very vividly, with some mistakes, but at least important events of your life, than to remember what you ate yesterday. Like this famous historian, René Raymond, he told me, you know, all these monks are so old, they won't remember. And the guy, this historian, is 77. I didn't do it, but I was going to reply, very soon you're going to experience the strange phenomenon that you're going to remember much better what you did 50 years ago than what you did yesterday, dear. So don't tell me they don't remember. They remember not everything. But if you probe their memory, then it comes back. Okay? To finish, then I'm going to, one more incident, and then I finish the lecture, and you can ask questions. Okay? I want to leave plenty of time so you ask questions, and I can make myself clearer. But obviously, it's very difficult to talk about a research in the making, because I'm learning so much, and the way I see it is changing almost every day. So, okay, talking about to an old lady. I talked to her on the phone, and she didn't know I was going to phone, and I didn't know I was going to phone, okay? I had 1 hour free in the afternoon, and I said, okay, before going to McGill, I phoned her, okay? And you have 2 minutes, really. It's a matter of psychology. You need a lot of psychology. You talk to the person, and you have 1 or 2 minutes to guess how to talk to that person. You know, what makes her laugh? What makes her ill at ease, or makes him ill at ease? Is he very, I would say, thin skin? Or is he the sort of doesn't mind, whatever is said? So you don't have, and if you make a mistake, you have a very short time to repair it, to just erase it. No, I didn't say that. Oh, that's what you understood. No, never, never, never. Are you a little hard of hearing? But then you said what you said, but you have just to try to. So I found her, and they are very lonely at that age. So they like to talk. So she said, I don't want to talk about that time in my life. But then she went on to talk about it, just 1 hour and a half. And then she told me about, I had never heard about that man who came from France, arrived here. She could even tell me almost the day he came here. She's the widow of a man involved in helping collaborators, okay? She's the widow. Most of the time you talk to women because they live older than men, so you have to rely on women. As usual, but so she talked about that. No one had ever mentioned his name. He came here, and then she told me, there is no picture of that man. You could never take a picture of him. While you could take picture of the big killer, the Bernardville. His picture was everywhere, the capital killer. But this man, no. I won't see his name, but then she said, he was hired by politicians to spy on communists in Quebec. I said, what? And then she repeated the same story the day after. I said, it might not be true, but if it's true, it's worth trying to check if it's true that some of them could have been used to, communists were being very often political opponents. Communists was just. So, but then she said, he used a false name. I said, oh yeah? I said, do you remember? She said, no. But it was the name of a street in eastern Montreal. She said, these long streets? Big deal. I've been living in Montreal since June the 22nd. I don't know exactly the name of the streets. So the day after when I talked to her, she said, oh yes, yesterday, after I talked to you, I remember his false name. She said, but now I forget again. But she said, while you are talking to me, I remember. She said, it's a name like, she said, a street near de la Naudière. I said, my dance, the school where I take dance lessons is near la Naudière. It's Plateau Mont-Royal. So while she was talking, I took a map of Montreal. I focused on Plateau Mont-Royal, and then I started saying the names of the streets. So I said, Garnier. She said no. De la Naudière, no. I said Brébeuf. She said no. Then I said Chambord. She said that's it. And it makes sense because what is Chambord? She said he lived on Chambord Street. Good. But it's even more revealing than that because Chambord is the name of the family, the successor au trône de France, the heir to the King of France. And it seems that the guy said to some people, Adrien Arcan, the fascist leader, among other people, that he was the future king of France. And Arcan believed it. The guy must have had a field trip here, So anyway, it seems that he was tipped off. He was dénoncé, and he had to leave. So he left for Italy, and then from Italy he went to Brazil, and Brazil, Peru, and Peru he died there. But it seemed that his widow is living in Spain. So this lady told me, I haven't heard from her for the last 2 years because she said, I'm almost blind, so I cannot write letters. I said, I'm going to write the letter for you. It would be my pleasure. You dictate the letter, I'm writing it. We're going to write to this nice lady. You know her address? She said, no. She said, I cannot remember. But it's in Spain, and it begins with the letter M. I said, well, Majorque? She said, no. Malaga? She said, no, but the nearest airport is in Malaga. So now if someone has a map of Spain, find the closest city to Malaga with an M, and that's the city where this person is living, if she's still alive. Because if she's alive, she's almost 90 now, you know. So, so sorry. It's great fun. And, well, you know, I would have given that speech 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. You wouldn't have known about Chambord and Father Thibodeau, who was in Paris trying to help French collaborators to come here. And the same is in 2 or 3 weeks. If I give another speech, there's going to be other information, because hopefully I'm going to know more then. So now I'm going to take questions. Don't be shy to ask. The only stupid questions are the ones we don't ask, as I was fond of saying when I was a teacher in a CGEP. Okay, first the gentleman here.
Research uncovered any connection between political refugees or collaborators and Mère Hood, or the Opus Dei organization?
Yes, well, Mère Camillien Hood, what a colorful character he was, you know, straight out of Looney Tunes, I think. He was mayor of Montreal, obviously, but he was an after-the-fact characters, you know. When they came here, few people knew who they were. Some people waited for them, like one of the monks was waiting for them because he knew from his boss in France that they were coming. It's not only monasteries, but it's monasteries. Why monasteries are going to ask the young students? Because monasteries have a duty to help refugees wherever they are. If you are in a monastery, nobody can arrest you. And it was true too of a church. So I always say that if I don't pay my taxes, I'm going to take refuge in a church, you know, so nobody can get at me there. So that's why it's monasteries. There's nothing, and monasteries are internationals. They all know each other. And the father abbot of the main monastery is visiting all the monasteries every 3 years. He goes there, check on the business, what's going on. No, it's very well organized. So these people knew before Camillien Hood. When Camillien Hood is going to come into action is when there is talk that these collaborators have to be deported. De Bernonville and Labedan, who's still alive, and other Seigneur and all the others. So then what they decide to do, some people are going to stay in the shadow because they are much more efficient like that. Others are going to come to the front, and others are going to be recruited. Camillien Hood was recruited. So he's going to write all these letters to Louis Saint Laurent. He even wrote to Admiral Leahy in Washington, who was the American ambassador in Free France. Me, mayor of Montreal, you know, we should not deport the Bernonville. You know, it's a Jewish conspiracy. They are as much anti-Semitic after the war as they were before. It's a communist and a Jewish conspiracy to get this nice guy deported. So he's going to be an important player, but once they are here and once they are in trouble. And Camillien Hood, like de Bernonville, was very, very intelligent, brutish, but he knew how to manipulate them, you know, although you didn't know to be that bright to know how to manipulate them. But he's going to say to Camillien Hood that they are both victims of the Jews. If Camillien Hood spent the wartime in a camp in Canada at Petawawa, it's because of the Jews. It's not because he was against conscription for French Canadians. No. It's again the communists, the Anglos, and the Jews. And Camillien Hood, who was none too bright, is going to buy it, you know, 100 000 à l'heure. So they shared that but more, even, you know, it's really a game of the, like Université de Montréal. Some students, like Camille Lorrain, because even the most awful people have been students, you know. Camille Lorrain and others signed a petition so de Bernonville, the big killer, would stay in Canada and not be deported to France, where he was condemned to death. Well, at the University of Montreal, not only students signed the petition, but the chancellor of the university did, all the deans did, rectors did, professors did. So it's not a big surprise that students did too. but it was really a movement. You know, the idea that Quebec was closed on itself, a society afraid of the big world, not knowing what was going abroad, you know, they knew very well. The elite knew, and the ordinary people knew too. It's a myth. It's not true. They knew very well that there was, among other things, a Second World War. If only because some of them hide in the woods of Quebec for not trying to escape conscription. It was no mystery when they present history of Quebec as, you know, until the 60s, Quebec was a society, some sort of folkloric society. It's not true. You know, it's very paternalistic as a way of presenting history in Quebec. History in Quebec of Quebec is much funnier than we believe it is, and much more interesting, but you have to look at it by the right, or at least a more creative side of it. Okay, yeah. You had a question? Okay, I'm going to make shorter answers now. Okay, you had another question?
As part of my first question, I asked for uncovering the connection between support for collaborators and Opus Dei organization.
Oh, I didn't hear Opus Dei. No. And I'm always very distrustful of these. When we present Opus Dei is a sort of very religious organization which was linked to Human Life International, which was in town recently, to present this sort of secret society as being extremely powerful. Because if they are that secret, you can say almost anything. You will never be able to prove it. Even with my monasteries, I have to prove that they did what they did. So I need letters. So I found letters. But otherwise, you can say whatever you want, you see. So I don't think, or remotely, but the main players, as far as I know, are not there. Yeah, you had a question?
Yes. What prompted you to do your research on anti-Semitism?
Why I did my research on anti-Semitism? Well, I like trouble. No, you know, I think that the best answer I can come up with would be that I don't know. You know, I don't know why I was so interested in that topic. I found, well, it hasn't been studied in depth in Quebec. So when you do a PhD dissertation, you're supposed to bring something new. You're not supposed to repeat what has been said. In Quebec, people tend to repeat what has been said, but it's not the way it's supposed to be done. So you're supposed to try to shed a new light or bring new evidence to what you are studying. And I thought, I had always been fascinated by what I call the murderous utopias of the 20th century. Meaning, you kill people in order to make them happy. This is a very modern and very strange idea. It started with the French Revolution. It continued with communism and fascism. You killed millions of people, so they're going to be happy. So you're going to, well, not the people who are dead, but the people who are going to stay alive. And when Lionel Groux is writing that he wants to send French Canadians he wants to re-educate them in camps. Maybe they don't want to kill them, but to spend your life in a re-education camps is not very funny, you know. But if you do that to them, then they're going to be happier, you know. They're going to be real French Canadian. It's this mad idea that if you kill or just reprogram someone, then he's going to be happy. And you know better than this person what is going to make this person happy. So I was dealing with anti-Semitism and this hatred toward what is called their own people. I was going to lose my job in a CGEP. So I said, well, if you want to do a PhD, it's now or never. And I did it. But why I have this, it's there. Maybe a psychologist could explain better than I can why I had this fascination with hatred for the Jews or hatred for whoever, whatever group. You had a question, yeah?
So what would you say if you were on the same platform with Ray?
With Julius Gray. Well, he's not there, so I don't like to answer when the guy is not there. You know, what did he say? That Holocaust was used to keep Jewish community together. Well, there might be some truth in it. You know, a famous sociologist, Robert K. Merton, wrote a book about the functions of the enemy. And for the French-Canadian side, it's going to be the Anglo. You use the Anglo to keep people allegedly together, so the Anglos, but it's a very short-sighted approach to a much broader phenomenon. It's not, I think, that it is altogether wrong or that it's false. It's a very partial explanation.
Well, what about this claim that there's no anti-Semitism in Tibet?
Obviously, it's not true, but for people, I don't want to play the cheap psychologist, but for people of that generation, he's in his 50s, I think, and from Poland, so obviously he lost most, if not all, his family in camps. I saw it in Jerusalem, and I saw it even 2 days ago listening to Jewish refugees, but in Canada. They were refugees in England, and then they were shipped to Canada. And in Canada, they were treated as prisoners of war. So they were put in camps behind barbed wires. And anyway, but it's not a very nice fate. It's better than being killed in Europe. But if you are a young man, you might be fed up being in camps here and there, You're going to start thinking that the whole world is a camp for you. But the reaction, let's say great. Some Jewish professors I had in Israel, and these refugees that I listened to 2 days ago, there is almost that need of saying, it was so terrible that now it's perfect. It was so awful that now I think it's a sort of psychological defense. Now it's perfect. I've never seen an anti-Semitism. I've been happy. And because you don't want to be the victim your whole damn life. You want a part of your life when it was nice. So it has to be now because it was not before. Like these nice gentlemen that I listened to 2 days ago who were in England. In England struck a deal with Canada. You take them as prisoners of war. But they were not, they were refugees. They ended up here. They were young men, ambitious, very bright. Again, in camps. You know what was the reaction? It was fascinating to listen to them. We had so much fun. Well, we went on a hunger strike and we had this, but we had lots of fun. It was, the only word that came was fun. One said that it was the only time, he was more honest than the other. He said that the time he had the greatest fun was in New Brunswick, Camp C, I think was called Camp C, ABC, where a soldier took them out and brought them to a brothel. So then the rabbi was very shocked to hear that. So the guy said, listen, I was 25. That was a funny exchange, Well, any guy was 25 and we spent, it's a harsh life. So anyway, he had lots of fun when he was in, but it was the only time where you could say, okay, maybe it was genuinely fun. Otherwise, being in camps is not funny. But then, fun was the word. They have to make it nice.
Are you condoning then what Bruce Ray said?
Sorry?
Are you condoning what Bruce Ray said?
First of all, it's not my job to condone whatever it is. He's not here. I won't launch a debate with someone who is not here pour se défendre. While I'm talking about it?
No, I mean, it's all right for you to talk about them. They're not here, but as you're saying, you can't talk about
Well, I'm talking about the research. I'm not having a debate with the monks. It's not the same at all. I'm talking about academic research. Real research. I'm not talking about the debate that I could have with anyone who is here and who made a declaration. No monks made a public declaration yesterday. Well, settle it among yourselves. I'm then the one to settle it. Okay, another question. Okay, yeah, a young student. Well.
Okay, do you think that the facts that raised could be rebirth of anti-Semitism is that like backside?
It might be. I don't know if it would be anti-Semitism or. But again, I was talking about the functions of the enemy. If we go through a very rough period, well, an example, we might find an enemy inside or outside to to stop people fighting between each other, because French Canadians are divided over sovereignty too. It's too easy to see that it's just the Anglos and the Jews, and all the ethnics, the people we more or less put under the category of ethnic. We have the ethnic. Well, it's much subtler than that, and I don't want to sound paranoid, but this war, the Canadian war over that fish called turbo in French, I suspect that, like my good friend Aislinn, isn't that strange that just before the referendum in Quebec, Canada all of a sudden has this noble, lofty urge to defend an ugly-looking little fish? Isn't that great that all of a sudden, while Canada was the first to break the law over how much fish you can fish here and there, they were the first. All of a sudden, we are so self-righteous, and there was even that declaration by the minister Tobin. How people could have burst laughing listening to that declaration when he said, he had a baby turbo, a baby fish, small. He said, I can see this fish screaming and crying and saying, save me, save me. And he was there at the United Nations with his little fish. I thought, but this is absolutely ludicrous, What's there? Only Canada, Canada is fun, you don't know how much. So, Quebec too, sometimes, we have our own brand of doing funny things, So, how convenient, all of a sudden, that we want to save this small baby fish. So, it's almost unavoidable in times of tension, you find a scapegoat. Well, you know that with your friends. It's much easier to make up with a friend you've been fighting with recently if you find a common enemy. Then you reconcile because you want to fight the third person. That's an old trick, that politicians, not only teenagers, politicians know that trick too, Not only young people. Yes. Okay, maybe this young student and then I go. So if they had any plan? I cannot take. Could someone repeat what she said? Oh, okay. Try to eliminate the Jews here. Well, I think that their first goal was to stay here, to avoid deportation, and then to make a life for themselves. Did they want to carry their European battle here? I don't know exactly. I wouldn't think so. And I'm going to tell you why. I met one of these collaborators 10 years ago, and I met him many times. And what was on his mind 10 years ago, and I guess what was on his mind when he came to Canada in 1947 and onward, was not as much as fight the Jews or fight that, as much as proving to themselves that they had been right. There is this immense need for self-justification. So you play on their bad conscience when you ask questions. They wanted to rewrite history, to prove that Pétain was right, Hitler was... they could not have been wrong. And their mistake could not have led them to leave France and start a new life here. For some it was easy, for some it was less easy. But maybe for some of them it was still part of the game, like that guy who might have been used by some politicians to fight communists. But I don't know more about it now. Yeah, who raised his hand? Okay, yeah, maybe. Okay, and then.
I'm curious to what do you think yourself of how do you evaluate the reaction that you received
Well, for people who might not know, my first book was not exactly well received. And, there was some violent reactions, so usually when I would give a speech like this, there would be someone who would start screaming. Now it's nice that everybody's so calm, I'm still waiting for someone to jump. Usually it was a man, his feet, and then start shouting and screaming, until... So, for one thing, I became a much tougher cookie than I've ever been in my life. Let me tell you that before, I really, it was a good thing, because now, what can bother me, I wonder, Nothing. Almost nothing, What would really bother me if I honestly felt, that a criticism is warranted. If someone would say, that I respect and I think is intelligent and honest, there are major flaws in your research, and here they are. And you have this little voice inside, when it's not good, no matter how much you can lie to yourself, you have this feeling, like I know that feeling when I know that what I did is a good piece. And I know that feeling when, no matter how much I try to rationalize, it's not good, I have to think more about it, So, but to hear that I'm insane, I've heard it. As a friend of mine said, you should have replied, well, that's an old criticism. We knew it for a long time. You should come up with something new, And that was something why there were so many personal attacks. Very personal, like I'm insane, or not writing my name, Esther Delisle, like if I don't have a first name, I'm Esther Delisle. Or the best one, to disconnect a store while I was signing books. This was the funniest one. With my huge publisher threatening the manager of the mall. I thought they're going to fight each other. It's going to be so terrible. I could see my publisher is quite a big guy, and he was saying to the manager, we're going to be out of you with the media. And I was doing, she's staying in front of the store. No, she's going back. She's staying there. And I was sitting there. Oh, I was so miserable. But it was in a store where I was supposed to sign books. So because the manager couldn't win and send me back in the store, he disconnected the store for 1 hour. So I was sitting in the dark. Well, all the rest of the mall, was it in Cavendish Mall? It was Côte Vertu or Cavendish. I don't remember, one or the other. Bright, all these lights, and then you had this black hole. And I was sitting in the front of it. But then, no bad deed will go unpunished. Because the media had nothing better to do that day, they sent a TV crew. So I ended up being on the news with Jean Chrétien. And the journalist had a very good sense of humor. He looked at me sitting in the dark bookstore, and he said, that's the return of the great darkness. Le retour de la grande noirceur. Great darkness is how we dubbed the time when Duplessis was the Prime Minister of Quebec. So I thought that it was interesting, could make that. But why so many, as I said, personal attacks or mean things like disconnecting the store? Or it's not normal. If a book is really bad, first of all, you don't talk about it for 4 years, okay? You don't talk about it 2 weeks after it has been published. And this attitude of getting at me, I think, as one good explanation, I'm right. By and large, it's true that there are flaws. It's a PhD dissertation, there are flaws. And it's not perfect, and it might not even be outstanding. But it's true. You cannot deny that they wrote what they wrote, and they said what they said. I have the quotations. If one thing, I have too many of them. So I think that this way of always trying to put me down or getting at me personally is because I'm right. Yeah, the gentleman.
Why
sorry.
Why did it take so long for your thesis to be accepted and you enough data about? Over 2 years for it to be accepted.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you want to hear the long saga about my dissertation. I will never, I think that this is going to follow me for those of you, I don't know if you know what is a PhD dissertation. Okay, some people are insane enough that they decide they're going to study the same thing 5 years in a row. It is called a PhD. Okay? So you work on it. Let's say you want to prove that the earth is flat. Okay, you're going to work 5 years proving that the earth is flat. Okay, that's going to be your thing. So I wanted to prove that Le Devoir and L'Aigle were anti-Semite and sometimes fascist. That was my earth is flat thing, okay? I'm going to prove it. So what you do the research. You write this long, boring piece of hundreds of pages. Mine was 450 pages. The first thing my publisher said when he saw it was unreadable. That he had one word, unreadable. So now you know why my ego is so strong. You know, there's nothing I haven't heard with that PhD, including that and he was right. Except a specialist, no one would read it, you know, because it's a demonstration. So it's very, very dry, So I wrote it. And then once you've written it, you submit it to professors. And they judge it. And then there is this public event where you face your panel. You know, you have these professors, usually male, and you face them, and then they have objections. So you defend your work. That's why it's called a defense of a dissertation. You defend your point of view. You say, yes, I'm right to say that the earth is flat because this and this and that. And they say, no, it's wrong because and this and that. No, then you answer, okay, you defend your dissertation. That's how it works, usually. So what happened in my case is that, okay, there was that controversy in the newspapers. I gave an interview, and then I guess some people decided that I shouldn't get the degree, because once you get your you go through the defense of your dissertation and you are successful, you are then a PhD. Officially, I am Dr. Delisle. Here it's less important, but in Europe it is of paramount importance. You are always called Dr. Delisle or Dr. No, it makes a difference. You are then a PhD. Well, when I submitted my dissertation for evaluation, I thought that the worst was over. The worst was just beginning, you know, because I had been warned in advance that I would have trouble. But I said, okay, I can manage. So then someone refused. He said, it's not even worth among the panel. They have to handwrite their statement. One said, I refuse it. What happened when one said that it's refused? There is a rift among the jury. A rift, a war. So you have to convene the jury and to try to patch things up between the one who say it's good and the others who say it's awful. Well, before they could convene that sort of conciliatory meeting, I had to wait, I think, 1.5 years. Because papers were lost, people were not... Everything normal and abnormal happened while I was waiting, you know, and waiting. But that's all I did. I waited. And I had no money because I wasn't a student anymore. I could not work because I was waiting for that damn degree. Anyway. So finally, to make a long, painful story short, on September 10, 1992, there is a defense for my dissertation. I'm going to be able to defend my dissertation. So I faced the panel after, while I was waiting that morning. It was in the afternoon. In the morning, I cleaned my turtle's tank. It's very good to, you know, cool you, you know, when you're getting very nervous. Find something that you don't need to do, that you don't need to think, you know. In my case, it was to clean my turtle's tank. They were the turtles with the cleanest tank, I think, in Quebec for 2 years. I spent my time cleaning the tanks and, you know, moving them from one place to another. The poor turtles. Now they are living happily with crocodiles in a pet shop. But because they got so huge, I couldn't keep them because they were so big. Anyway, so there was this defense of my dissertation. And usually when you get to that point, it's a done deal. You have the degree. They make sure that you won't be humiliated in public by not having the degree. Well, in my case, it was not a done deal. So at the worst, there were 5 members of the jury. Worst, there is a majority against it. I lose it in front of 80 people. How nice it is. What happened, and that's what I hope for, 3-2. 3-4, 2 against. The best, impossible, 5-4. And while I was defending that dissertation, this distinguished professor started screaming that I was insane, that Le Devoir was not anti-Semitic, was not delirious, that I was delirious, I didn't know what I was saying anymore, and that what I had written was not a PhD dissertation. And then he took up my dissertation and he started throwing the papers everywhere, saying, I don't know how to call it, I don't know what it is. And I thought, I'm going to punch him on the nose. I thought, I was pale, like one of my best girlfriends was sitting in the front when she was doing, no, don't move, because I was livid. I thought, that's it. But I said, if you punch him on the nose, it's good. But then you lose the degree, you're expelled. You cannot do that. So I said, sit down, don't move. So it was a shouting match. But then, it goes back to the personal attacks. Why say that I'm delirious? It's true, as my friends have known for many years. No point bringing it back, So when they finally left, and the panel left the room to take its decision, and when they came back, I was waiting. I saw my academic advisor smiling, and I thought, I got it. I don't know how, by which margin, and then you stand up, it's very formal, and the dean read the paper saying, I am pleased to announce that you got the degree by a majority of vote. And then people burst applauding and screaming, and it was very moving. And I was half dead, out of stress. So I gave many more details so students would understand what is a PhD and everything, but I think that it sum up the reaction, that these personal attacks and the fact that I had to wait so long so that I would get discouraged proved that by and large, it's not perfect, but by and large, I was right. And that later, my main satisfaction is not that I became more or less famous. It's true that I'm rather well known, but that students in 5 years will still be able to work basing their research on my book. One day it will be outdated, but in the near future, it is still something you can use. And one day, someone will do better than I did. And this will be the greatest tribute I can receive. Someone did better than I could do. That's how things progress. This gentleman had a question, yeah?
Going back to what you said earlier on about nationalistic movements, especially, always pick a real or imagined enemy to unite their movement. I was talking with the cases in 38 or 39, the Japanese ambassador in Germany, he said, I envy you. Your Jewish problem is less because you produce some Jews who hate to unite our nation. This seems to be repeated over and over again. You pick real or imagined enemy, you degrade them, make them out to be inhuman or easier for the people to hate, and therefore unite.
Yeah, although not everyone, good for us and good for the world, not everyone goes as far as the Nazi did. But it's true that there is this. That's how Jehovah's Witnesses could be persecuted as they were in Quebec. And Duplessis was very clever in picking as victims the Jehovah's Witnesses because they were not popular. It says in your class, if someone is persecuted in your class and this is the least appealing student, are you going to be chivalrous enough to go and defend this poor person? No. Because who wants to defend the least popular or the least liked student in a class? It's not easy. You say, and this person is not even likable. It's difficult to defend people you don't find likable. But that's what human rights are about. You're not there to defend people who behaved well and do everything by the books. You're there to defend people who are not exactly. I think that if there is something we have to learn from the United States of America and their Constitution, that's it. The Constitution of the United States was not thought of to defend your average Joe. The average Joe doesn't need. It's the outcast, the odd man that has to be, or the odd person that has to be defended. And it's very true in the case of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They were very annoying. Now they are better, but they knock at the doors of people, Sunday morning, do you want to become a Jehovah's Witness? Ha, 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 that's what you want to hear. So when they were persecuted and sent to jails, and nobody defended them except English and Jewish lawyers. And one of them, Frank R. Scott from McGill University. One of the few decent Canadians I think we had. And he nearly ruined his career by defending the Jehovah's Witnesses. But when he beat Duplessis in the Supreme Court, that was something to be done, to be better than Maurice Duplessis, all-powerful Prime Minister of Quebec. Then everybody that had snubbed Frank R. Scott, because he was defending free, mind you, as a lawyer, the Jehovah's Witnesses, it didn't help, to say the least, his career at McGill. All of a sudden, he had all these friends. For sure. He had won over Maurice Duplessis. Then he was the guy who should stick around. Well, before he was not. You see? So, nobody's perfect, but once in a while you have a Frank R. Scott and who can make some imperfect but little justice in this world. Yeah, someone had a question. Yeah, or ask someone, not ask. No, okay. Because I'd like. Oh, sorry. No, it's because I want to be fair to everyone. So someone who hasn't asked a question might have the opportunity. Yeah, over there. Yeah. I think that what happened in Quebec, and that's the difference between Quebec and France for the intellectual life, is that here it is much more homogeneous. You have to think everybody the same thing. Okay, if there is a milieu, if there is a place in the society where it is difficult to be original, that's universities, and it's terrible. You have to beat that terrible orthodoxy, it's all, and I think that it has to do with the way it's not a direct cause, but Catholicism was so strong here, and I have nothing against it. I was even baptized, you see. So, not that they asked me what I wanted, but at that age. Although the doctor who helped my mother when she was giving birth to me was Jewish, so. But, I read, and it's going to explain why it is so difficult and why it might have to do with the way they were trained as Catholics in classical colleges, even after the Quiet Revolution, the 60s. I read one enlightening sentence about the 50s, mind you, not even the 90s. And this sentence was by Abbé Gérard Dion, who is dead now, a real gentleman, a priest, who established the Department of Industrial Relations at Laval University. And this man defended me. So it says, a gentleman, he was the guy, okay. And he said that in the 50s, you couldn't say anything from a religious point of view that hasn't been written before in an encyclic. So it's the same now. You cannot write anything about history in Quebec that hasn't been written previously in one of the major history books. It's not encyclic now, but it's the same pattern. You have to put your interpretation in one interpretation that already exists. You cannot be original. Then it's dismissed. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. You're done.
I'd like to thank you very much for coming to speak to us today. It was very interesting, so thank you. If anyone's interested, there is some information at the back of the room on the Holocaust that you can pick up on your way out. And there will also be a display downstairs in the lower atrium from the Montreal Holocaust Museum. And so please come and see that today and tomorrow. Thank you.